Kessen is a real-time strategy game developed and published by Koei for the PlayStation 2 in the primordial year 2000. It was actually a launch title for the system, and yes, that means this game and the PS2 are 25 years old. That makes them not ancient, but definitely elderly by video game standards. This game covers the end of the Sengoku Jidai and the decisive battle at Sekigahara. The word Kessen literally means decisive battle. When you first start the game, you're greeted by a message from the founder of Koei, where he talks about wanting to create a game that is like a movie that you could control. So let that be the question for this video. Did he succeed in that? In Kessen there are two player factions, the Eastern Army and the Western Army. Both factions are largely the same with only visual differences between their soldiers. The main difference is between individual officers in each faction, but I'll talk about that a little later. There are two kinds of battles in Kessen, minor battles and major battles. In a minor battle you're given a predetermined army and a smaller map to fight in, although minor battles sometimes have different objectives, either revolving around escaping or preventing an enemy escape. Now let's talk about major battles. To start with, you're given a list of the enemy officers you'll be facing in the battle. Then you're given the option to inspire with the least loyal of these officers. You can ask them to do one of two things. Either they bide and sit out of the battle, or you can ask them to directly defect to your side. You can see that officers have bias towards each side, but that doesn't tell the whole story. Officers do have grudges towards each other and will not defect to a faction led by someone they have a grudge against. For example, Masanori Fukushima, despite having a split bias, will never defect to the Western Army as long as Mitsunari Yoshida leads it, but if something happens to him, Fukushima will be more inclined towards defection to the West. After the subversion section, you're given the ability to select your own officers for the battle. Officers with a yellow tick are required for the battle, but the rest can be free switched in or out of the roster. You can also change the troops each officer has, although you can't change how many troops they have. The game usually gives each officer the best troops and formation for that officer, but there are some minor changes you can make to optimize the army. For example, an officer with access to rifle attacks would be better off with more riflemen than bowmen. There are also female versions of some units, though only a few officers can use them. They seem to be the same as their male counterparts when it comes to fighting, so you can freely switch between them for officers that have access to them. Officers also have their own stats, such as battle and intelligence. These stats are set in stone and can't be influenced, so it's a good idea to use officers with bare stats, although you may find a good officer leads less troops than a bad one, forcing you to choose between quantity and quality. Before every battle, you're greeted by a narrated cutscene. These really help introduce you to the setting.
Ieyasu Tokugawa, commander of the Eastern Army, set out from Edo to fulfill his dreams of conquest. Tokugawa's force was to rendezvous with those of other commanders, or daimyo, with the intent of crushing the Western Army in one decisive blow.
Even if you have no idea what's happening, these scenes do a good job of showing you where this is taking place, and the narration tells you the basics of who is fighting and why. There are also more cutscenes showing the commanders and officers discussing matters before and after a battle.
The Tokugawa standard. It looks like his primary force. What are they doing here, of all places?
Heaven has granted us this opportunity. Finally, we can take the head of Ieyasu.
Hold, Sarkar. It serves us no purpose to fight them in this place.
What? Who was that? Who dares sound the call?
My lord, it came from the Tokugawa line.
Tokugawa.
For minor battles, the battle will begin after this cutscene ends, but for major battles there is one last thing to do, and that is position your army on the battlefield. The game gives you some predetermined battle plans, such as all-out attack, defensive plan, or simply army hold position. After you select a plan, you can choose to micromanage the officer placement, as well as set 4 officers' unique battlefield stances. You can assign 2 officers to build forts at the location, and 2 officers to set up an ambush. The fort will increase the defense of anyone inside, while the ambush will of course ambush any enemy that approaches them. On the flip side, ambush officers can't be used in battle until the ambush is carried out, or by cancelling the ambush. It's usually a good idea to place officers behind the ambushing officers to lure the enemy towards the ambush. Forts can be placed anywhere on the battlefield, but ambushes can only be placed in spots that have a purple marker, so you can't just place them wherever you please. You have to work around the ambush to make them effective. We can now finally talk about the actual battling. When you start a battle, given your objective, usually defeat the enemy commander. You are then informed of both enemy and allied reinforcements that may be coming to the battle, and where they will arrive after the battle begins. On the side of the screen you see a collection of hats. This is where you'll spend most of your focus in a battle, as these are your officers, and the colour of the background of each officer tells you their status, blue being winning current fight, red being losing, yellow being idle or moving. The background will also flash or glow when an officer can perform a special move. Other than that, you can open the officer's status page, which will list his information, such as how many units his force are destroyed, and the 3 most important stats in a battle: morale, fatigue and zeal. Morale and fatigue are fairly obvious stats. As an army fights and is affected by special moves, their morale will fluctuate, and as they fight or move on the battlefield, their fatigue will rise, or fall if they are idle. The final stat, zeal, is one used to use special moves. It rises for each unit individually, based on the flow of the battle. For example, an officer winning a duel will raise zeal for all officers on his side. An officer attacking an enemy officer that's already engaged will raise the zeal of the officers already fighting, and defeating an enemy officer will raise zeal across the army. But what is zeal spent on? There are various abilities that officers can use both inside and outside combat. For example, they can carry a raid, a charge, a rifle barrage, a bow volley, cannon attack, spear wall, cavalry shooting, cavalry riding while shooting, artillery barrage, ballista attack, a triple rifle barrage, a ninja attack, a drum call, a rally, and finally avoid and escape. I'm sure I missed at least one there. Anyway, all of these are offensive moves, except for the last four. Drum Call increases the morale of a unit using it. Rally allows a unit to transfer its zeal to another unit. Avoid allows a unit to avoid being attacked. And finally, Escape lets a unit retreat from battle immediately. There is one other move that can happen, but the player has no control over it. It is a duel. Officers with high battle tend to randomly challenge enemy officers to duels. Losing doesn't kill the officer, but it does decrease both morale and zeal of the officer, while increasing the zeal of not just the winner, but his allies as well. Armies cannot be directly controlled, only ordered to carry out tasks, and officers in charge of each force can either accept instructions, protest, or refuse. Accept is self-explanatory, while a protest means they agree to carry out the action, but they lose zeal in the process. Finally, a refusal results in obviously them refusing the order, but also losing zeal. Officers have their own interests on the battlefield. If they have an enemy they hate, they will often ask for permission to attack that enemy, and if you say no, they may in turn refuse to not attack. Your own officers may even carry out special moves without your consent. This makes battles feel a little bit like herding cats, where you're trying to let your officers do as they like, in such a way that benefits you. You also have to be wary of officers that refuse commands, as they may be planning to defect to the other side. Yes, the enemy can also try to subvert your officers in the same way you can theirs. The only officers that will never refuse an order is your commander. Other than that, there are a few cutscenes that can be triggered by certain officers meeting on the battlefield. For example, if Fukushima and Ishida meet, this cutscene plays.
Today, I shall have your head as my prize!
Fukushima, the ungrateful wretch! Has he forgotten all that the Toyotomis have done for him? I shall punish him myself for his blatant insolence!
There aren't many of these in-battle cutscenes, but some of them have actual effects on the battle. For example, if Fukushima and Kato meet, they will refuse to fight each other, and the units will be unable to attack each other. The final kind of battle cutscene are related to defections. When some officers defect, a cutscene will play.
I'll fight for the East. I'll side with Tokugawa!
No! My lord!
Silence! Itsunari Ishida is the enemy! Attack!
What? Lord Kabayakawa has defected? This cannot be. He is Lord Taiko's nephew. This is not possible. This cannot be!
The Taiko, Hideyoshi Toyotomi has died. His infant son, Hideyori, is too young to govern, and so a council of elders takes control of the nation. The most powerful of these, one Ieyasu Tokugawa, begins accumulating power, intending to take the land for himself. Ieyasu demands the submission of the northern Uesugi clan. When they refuse, he begins to march north with his army. In the west, the loyal Toyotomi retainers gather under a man named Mitsunari Ishida, intending to stop the Tokugawa's power grab. When he hears of this, Ieyasu changes course and instead marches west, intending to crush the loyalist army, ensuring Tokugawa dominance. The two forces meet in the province of Mino, where we will experience our first battle. For the purpose of this video, I'll be playing as the Western Army and showing one of the 4 playable routes. I'll explain why I'm only showing one and not all 4 later on in the video. This route is my favourite route, and is also the historical one, although we'll be playing from the perspective of the losers rather than the winners. The events of this game take place 400 years ago, so major spoiler, everyone depicted in this game is dead. But if you don't want spoilers to both this 25-year-old game and real-world history, please skip ahead in the video. Our first battle is the skirmish at Kusagawa. This battle has no real impact on the overall plot. No one dies if you lose and you don't kill anyone if you win. It's mainly a tutorial battle that will introduce you to the game mechanics. It's also a rather simple battle, with both sides only having 3 units each. Even so, it's easy for a first-time player to lose this battle, but as I said, there are no major consequences. Then we move on to the first major battle at Sekihara. This battle introduces us to many Western Army officers and shows that all is not well in the Western camp, but Mitsunari takes it in stride.
Word has circulated that those two have been in contact with Ieyasu.
They would not betray us. Even those two moles can see that we are in the right.
As is our first major battle, we will be able to collude with enemy officers. Unfortunately, due to the fact that literally all of them hate Mitsunari Ishida, none will be defecting to our side in this battle. For this battle, I don't change our initial officer setup much, although I do exchange Gamo for Katsu, mainly because Katsu will appear in every other battle in the game, unlike Gamo, who will only appear in this one. For our deployment, I plan to go for an all-out attack and attempt to eliminate the Tokugawa as quickly as possible in order to avoid any potential defections from our side. Some battles have cutscenes that take place during them. For example, this battle, the battle at Sekigahara, has 3 cutscenes: the Shimazu retreating, Kabayakawa thinking of defecting, and the Mori thinking of defecting.
That sniveling Kabayakawa! What is he waiting for? I told him to attack immediately!
What can he be doing? Why doesn't he move? Kabayakawa must rise and attack!
Lord! Lord! The West have already entered the fray. We must join them!
Silence, Matsuno! I'm thinking! Which will bring more gain? The East or the West?
But I don't plan to have anyone defect from my side, so I use an unorthodox tactic. In order to prevent an allied unit defecting, I resign the battle.
My lord, I bring grave news. The army is in shambles.
So this fight is finished. Dismantle the main camp!
After losing, the Western Army attempts to retreat, but the Eastern Army aren't willing to let them go, and so we move to the minor battle, retreat from Minakuchi.
There is no doubt in my mind that Tokugawa's troops are waiting just ahead.
There may be no escape for us this time. We must launch an attack on their mid-flank. Let us show the strength of Satsuma!
We must not fail. We must charge and break through Ieyasu's lines. Together we shall be triumphant! For the glory of the West! Onward!
This battle actually has a secondary objective, that being getting some of your officers to the other end of the map, but that's easier said than done. It's better to just fight and defeat the Eastern Army, which is what we do. This battle isn't that noteworthy, other than at one point I accidentally tell Chosukabe to retreat, and he says no and calls me an idiot.
What? You idiot!
This battle has some major effects on our roster, which we can influence by winning.
I wonder, did Lord Shima survive?
Yes, Sakon Shima, who would have died if we had lost this battle, survives, and will be available for later battles in the future, but someone won't be.
The Eastern Army was victorious at Sekigahara, and Mitsunari Ishida lies dead. Now, a fresh enemy stands to oppose Tokugawa, Josui Kuroda, the new commander of the forces of the West. Josui Kuroda was the military genius who had helped devise Hideyoshi's plans for conquest. Josui retired, leaving control to his son Naga Kuroda. However, seeing the conflict between Tokugawa and Ishida, he joins with Kiyomasa Kato, Murashige Tachibana, and the others to overrun Kyushu. Then, responding to the pleas of Lady Yodo, he leads his Kyushu forces northeast. He heads to join the Western leaders who have deployed around Harima. In the east, Ieyasu leaves Edo and leads his forces in an attempt to intercept Josui at Harima. 1 year since Sekigahara, another great conflict is set to begin. Its first battlefield, Harima, the home of Josui Kuroda.
With Ishida gone, we are introduced to the new leader of the West, one Josui Kuroda, or more commonly known as Kanbei Kuroda. We then get a cutscene of Yukimori Sanada's father being killed by assassins, and a far more interesting cutscene of the Western Army officers seething at Kuroda's appointment as leader.
Tell me why did Lady Yodo give Josui control over the army?
Even the Taiko was wary of Lord Josui's skill on the battleground. With him on our side, I assure you we won't lose another Sekigahara.
But his loyalties are questionable, Lord Shimazu. You know this full well. His recent attempt to take Satsuma makes this abundantly clear.
this moment, I would guess that they are in there cursing my name.
Lord Josui's ambition is great. Oh, I've heard talk that says he means to rule the land. It's clear we cannot trust him. Why, even his own son, Naga Kuroda, is with Ieyasu Tokugawa.
Lord Josui is a hardened veteran. He cares little for his son.
I wonder.
Lord Kiyomasa Kato is with Lord Josui. He would never betray the Toyotomi family.
Betrayal? Perhaps not. But could Kiyomasa be deceived?
And perhaps you worry too much.
However...
My lords, I am sorry to have kept you waiting. My name is Josui Kuroda, and it is my pleasure.
For this battle, we'll try to get Masanori Fukushima to defect to the west. Other than that, we choose to leave less savoury characters like Bayakawa and the Mori out of our roster, even trading Mori's 10,000 men for Katsu's 1,800. Trust me, it's for the best.
Me, commander of the West, with fate comes irony, it would seem. But first, I must do what is necessary and crush Ieyasu Tokugawa. Let us begin.
The battle goes quite well. We take minimal losses and fight all the way to the Tokugawa main camp, and then...
My loyalties are torn! I'm sick of thinking! I shall follow my heart, as I once did for Lord Toyotomi! I shall unleash my fiery wrath! Doria! Fukushima! Repay me with deception!
Fukushima defects to the west. He brings along Kani too.
I choose the West! They are in the right!
I never expected him to. I was blind!
With no one standing in our way, I promptly resign. When I said Western Army defeat route, I meant all the way.
Lady Yodo placed the fate of the Toyotomi family in my hands, and I have failed. That is my only regret, and it shall haunt me through eternity.
I, Yukimura Sanada, swear to protect Lord Hideyori. Rest easy, my lord.
It must be so.
After that, the Tokugawa effectively take over the country and found the Tokugawa shogunate. But Ieyasu, wanting to fully destroy any opposition, moved against the weakened Toyotomi family in 1614, more than a decade after Sekigahara and Harima. This brings us to the last minor battle, the defense of Seda. This battle is very short. Why? Because the moment it starts, I resign. Winning would lead to the death of a character, and his death is not part of my grand design after all.
Lord Yukimura was defeated, was he? It seems that all we can do is cower here in Osaka Castle.
The battle between Toyotomi and Tokugawa that began at Seta has reached a deadlock, with the Western forces brought to bay at Osaka Castle. Hopeful of preventing a long and drawn-out siege, Tokugawa calls for peace. This brings the winter battle at Osaka to a close. However, Tokugawa stipulates that the moat surrounding Osaka Castle be filled with dirt as a condition for peace. Lady Yodo and Yuki Sanada prepare for battle, determined to uphold the honor of the Toyotomi family. But with only the inner walls of the castle remaining, they will be unable to withstand a siege. Conversely, Ieyasu Tokugawa is determined to finalize his conquest. On April 4th, 1615, his forces leave Sunpu for a final attack on Osaka.
Lord Yukimura, you will lead this next offensive.
The traitor's vile actions shall not be forgiven!
Lord Yukimura, we are placing our lives and our destiny in your hands.
We're honored.
This is the first time we get to see the young head of the Toyotomi family, Hideyori. Unfortunately, he will not be joining us in this battle, and we could really use it because we are vastly outnumbered right from the start with a tiny roster against a much larger one. But Fukushima's on our side, so that's nice. Our battle plan is a little more involved than in other battles. I attempt to create a choke point in the centre of the map where I can lure the Tokugawa forces into a kill zone that I will then bombard with cannons, hopefully thinning their numbers enough to win. The real MVPs for this battle will be Fukushima, Goda and Chosa. These three will hold the enemy in place while our other units with cannons fire on them. It goes very well. At one point though, a Yoshi approaches Yukimura Sanada and gets destroyed in one blow, showing the power of the ninja troops. With most of the Tokugawa being held down in the centre, I decide to have Yukimura Sanada head straight for Ieyasu's main camp and defeat him. Unfortunately, it goes the other way and Tokugawa wins.
No! This cannot be true!
Is that so? Lord Yukimura. He has been killed in battle. Toyotomi is no more. This is the end.
We then get a cutscene of the Sanada ninjas visiting a grave, which is implied to be Yukimura's, with the sun setting. And then it's back to main menu. Game over, I guess. But what if things went a little differently? I do everything the same as last time, except having Yukimura go off to fight on his own, and after we destroy enough Tokugawa units, this happens.
I shall fulfill my dreams of world conquest. I will not allow such a campaign to send me to an early grave. From this time onward, raise your banners and fight for the West!
Samune? I expected this least of all from you, old friend. You dare betray me. Then remember this, traitor. All who oppose me shall die by my sword!
For those who are paying attention, they'll note this is the second time Ieyasu has destroyed his fan due to somebody defecting from his force. After that, we simply play out the level as normal and defeat the Tokugawa. Unfortunately, Ieyasu doesn't die here, it was just a body double. We then move on to the final battle, the second round at Sekigahara.
The battle at Osaka has ended in victory for the West. A defeated Tokugawa heads for Kyoto, however he's pursued by Yuki Sanada and forced to return to Edo. With the troops of the shogunate in confusion, Yuki Sanada wins entry into Kyoto. Once there, the Toyotomi family petition the emperor to appoint Hideyori Toyotomi as chief advisor and to approve a campaign against Tokugawa. The petition is granted. Sanada, as commander of the army, begins to gather the daimyo from across the land for an attack against Ieyasu, enemy of the state. In the east, Ieyasu also gathers his men, determined to remove the stain from his honor. He leaves Edo, moving quickly to oppose the Western Army. The two forces meet at Sekigahara. On this fated battleground, the final clash for supremacy is about to commence.
So this is the final battle, the fictional second battle at Sekigahara. There's much to say about this level, there aren't many cutscenes for it, and it's the same map as last time. The only major differences are the officers, with most of the ones that took part in the original battle at Sekigahara being dead, as it took place more than 10 years ago. This battle is rather easy as opposed to the last one. We have a large army, plus we have the Date who joined us, so we quite easily overpower the Tokugawa forces, even cause a defection.
I am truly sorry, Lord Tokugawa, but this is the ugly nature of war. Ah! So now, I shall abandon the East and spill blood for the West! Ah! Whoa! What? Takatora Todo was declared for the West? Takatora? So this is how you repay me, you wretch! Damn you!
Yoshi defects as well, probably still traumatized after that last battle and deciding that the Western Army is probably just going to win this one. Yoshi actually gets the last hit in and finishes off the Tokugawa.
I cannot die! Not...
You did well.
Thank you. The Toyotomi family is finally safe. I offer my sincere congratulations.
Finally, we get a cutscene of the Usos gazing out to sea while the sun rises, in contrast to the losing ending where the sun sets. Credits then roll and that's the end of this story, or at least this route for the Western Army. Now for my positives, negatives, and final conclusions. Let's start with things I liked about the game. I think the base gameplay is fun, or at the very least engaging. Attempting to subvert enemy officers, choosing which of your officers to bring with you, choosing their units and positions on the battlefield, helps make battles feel very engaging. I enjoy the cutscenes, they are well voice acted and animated, although I may be being affected by nostalgia here, there are definitely some cringe-worthy scenes. The game's age hasn't negatively affected it, even though it's 25 years old it looks fine, maybe even good, but then again I might be being affected by nostalgia. Officers being consistent characters that can die, defect, and have their own rules on which orders they are inclined to follow makes them feel more alive. The game is fairly historical, but does add some fictional battles like Harima, but I'm willing to forgive that, because if the game was fully historical, there would only be really 2 major battles. The existence of Harima helps elongate the historical route. Also, Josui Kuroda coming out of retirement to save the Toyotomi didn't happen, but it should have. Mitsunari being able to win is definitely nice. It'd be disappointing if no matter what the player did, Yukimura ended up being leader of the West. Being able to lose is also a very interesting idea, and I appreciate there are cutscenes and dialogues that can only be seen by playing as the loser. The translation is fine, but then again I grew up playing Japanese games, so I have a high tolerance for poor translations. Finally, I'll say the game emulates very well. All the footage I used for this video was using an emulator, and it looks and sounds almost identical to the normal game. For the record, I used PCSX2 version 2.20 in case you are curious. Now let's move on to things I didn't like about the game. The game is too short, both in length and width. I'd like to see more routes, like a route where Hideyori becomes leader of the West, or a route where Josui Kuroda actually wins. The Eastern Army also needs more leaders. There could easily be situations where Hidetada Tokugawa takes over the Eastern Army. You could even have Masamune Date seize power in a Kuroda-like route. There isn't much customizability. Yes, you can change the units of officers, that's about it. Most officers won't benefit from changing their troops, as their special moves stay the same no matter what. The game is rather easy, even on higher difficulties, with it coming down to who spams special moves enough, and at the right targets. The game doesn't fully unlock until you play the game twice. For the first playthrough you're forced to play as the Eastern Army, then on the second playthrough the Western Army. After playing through the first time you unlock battle history. This shows the routes you took, and when fully finished shows all routes in the game. Then after the second playthrough you unlock the ability to choose battles and difficulty settings. My question is why? I understand restricting stuff for the first playthrough, but why force the player to play through twice to unlock everything? Why force the player to play the Western Army on the second playthrough? What if they want to play the Eastern Army and go down the other route? They can't. I think it's strange. After all, how many people would bother to play through the game twice to unlock everything? A very small thing I dislike here, so I'll try to keep it brief. Mitsunari Ishida's armor. I don't understand it. Why isn't his armor more in line with his historical armor? I mean, I don't hate his armor, I just don't understand where the design comes from, or why he has it, especially when lots of characters have armor in line with their historical counterparts. It would be nice to have a gallery listing all cutscenes. After all, I still feel like there may be an obscure scene I've missed. I really don't need to see officers agreeing to commands every single time. Refusing or protesting commands, sure, I need to see those, but them just saying yes boss every time I tell them to walk an inch, I don't really need to see that. Finally, perhaps the most damning thing about the game, every route largely has the same ending. I won't spoil what the ending is, but it's very disappointing that we don't get any information about what Japan would look like under the different winners. I mean, an Ishida victory would look very different to a Sanada victory, even if they're both Western Army leaders. Final verdict. Is it worth playing this game in Year of Our Lord 2025 Anno Domina? I would say yes, but only if you're interested in the setting or the gameplay's intrigued you. Otherwise, it doesn't really offer much to people who aren't interested in the setting or the gameplay. But then that goes for most games. Did it meet its goal of being a movie you can control? Somewhat. The fact that you can lose and the game continues helps make it feel very interactive. The large amount of cutscenes also help make it feel a lot like a movie, but at the end of the day, a movie is a passive form of entertainment, so a movie with viewer input is a bit of an oxymoron, and modern games have shown us what a real movie game is like. Even so, if I was asked if this game is like a movie you can control, I would say sure, I guess, but I'm not sure how much of an audience there is for controllable movies. Thank you for watching my video. It was actually a lot of work, and I have a newfound respect for people that make videos now. Will I make a video on Kessen 2? Yes, but not right now. Instead, I'll review another game next. An indie title, set in space, inspired by Advanced Wars. Anyway, thank you again.